The Galactic Military Academy's main courtyard buzzed with the kind of energy you'd expect from a bunch of young aliens who thought they knew everything about warfare, which, spoiler alert, they absolutely did not. Commander Vex, a 7-foot-tall reptilian with scales that shimmered like oil on water, stood at the center of it all. His forked tongue flicked out as he surveyed the new batch of recruits with the kind of disdain usually reserved for expired milk. "Cadets," he hissed, his voice carrying across the courtyard like nails on a chalkboard. "Today you will witness the finest military technology our galaxy has to offer." Cadet Zorp, an insectoid creature whose exoskeleton gleamed with built-in energy conduits, practically vibrated with excitement. His compound eyes reflected the morning sun as he adjusted his personal energy shield generator. "Commander, my biotech defensive matrix can withstand plasma burst up to Class 7 intensity," he chittered, clearly fishing for praise. "Impressive," Vex nodded approvingly. "And you, Cadet Blaze?" The energy being flickered between solid and plasma states as he spoke, his voice crackling like a poorly tuned radio. "Sir, my molecular cohesion armor can phase shift to avoid projectile impacts entirely. My people have evolved beyond the need for primitive physical protection." That's when the humans walked in. Now, to be fair to the aliens, humans didn't make the best first impression. While everyone else was decked out in gear that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie, the humans shuffled in wearing what could generously be described as military surplus from a thrift store. Kevlar vests that had seen better decades, ceramic plate inserts that looked like they'd been hammered out in someone's garage, and helmets that wouldn't have looked out of place in a historical documentary about 20th century conflicts. The laughter started almost immediately. "By the 7 moons of Zephyria," Zorp wheezed, his mandibles clicking in what passed for amusement among his species. "Are those actual fabric-based protective garments? Do they weave their own armor from plant fibers?" Blaze's form flickered more rapidly as he processed what he was seeing. "I've studied their species. They still use chemically propelled projectiles and kinetic energy weapons. How wonderfully primitive." Commander Vex's reptilian features twisted into what might have been a smile if you were feeling generous. "Ah, yes, the humans. 3rd planet from an unremarkable yellow star. Recently discovered hyperspace travel, and still fighting with what they call bullets. How quaint." The human squad leader, a stocky man with graying hair and the kind of 1,000-yard stare that suggested he'd seen things that would make a horror movie director weep, stepped forward. His name tag read SGT, Rock, which honestly seemed too on the nose to be real, but there it was. "Sergeant Rock," Vex said, not bothering to hide his amusement, "I trust your people have brought their finest equipment." Rock's expression didn't change as he gestured to his squad. "This is it, sir." The courtyard erupted and barely contained snickers. Even the Academy's maintenance drones seemed to be judging the humans' gear with their optical sensors. "Fascinating," Vex continued, circling the human formation like a predator sizing up prey. "Tell me, Sergeant, how exactly do you expect fabric and ceramic to protect against plasma weapons, energy beams, molecular disruptors?" Rock shrugged. "We make do." "Make do," Blaze repeated, his energy form pulsing with what could only be described as condescending glee. "Did you hear that, Zorp? They make do. Perhaps they'll craft spears from local vegetation next." The thing about humans, though, is that they have this annoying habit of not reacting the way you expect them to. While any self-respecting species would have either challenged the insults or slunk away in shame, the humans just stood there, waiting, watching, like they'd heard all this before and were already 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. Which, as it turned out, they absolutely were. The training ground demonstration was supposed to be a simple show and tell, but it quickly turned into something resembling a cosmic peacocking contest. The alien cadets couldn't resist showing off their shiny toys, and honestly, you had to admit some of it was pretty impressive. Zorp activated his personal energy shield, and a shimmering blue dome materialized around him. "Behold," he announced, striking a pose that would have made a superhero jealous. "The pinnacle of defensive technology. This barrier can deflect energy weapons, absorb kinetic impacts, and even filter out harmful atmospheric particles." "Wonderful," muttered Private Murphy, the human demolitions expert, as he casually adjusted a strip of duct tape on his vest. "Does it come with a warranty?" Commander Vex either didn't hear the comment or chose to ignore it. "Cadet Blaze, demonstrate your people's evolutionary advantages." Blaze's form shifted from solid to a crackling mass of controlled energy. "My molecular structure can adapt to any threat. Physical projectiles pass harmlessly through my dispersed form, while energy attacks are absorbed and converted to power. He flickered back to solid state with a sound like a fluorescent bulb giving up on life. I am, essentially, immune to conventional warfare. Neat party trick, Rock observed, his tone as flat as week-old soda. What happens when you need to carry equipment? I beg your pardon? Rock gestured to his squad, who were methodically checking their gear with the kind of practiced efficiency that comes from doing something 1,000 times before. Radios, ammunition, medical supplies, food, water. You know, the stuff that keeps you alive longer than 5 minutes in actual combat. Blaze's energy form flickered uncertainly. Well, that is to say... Moving on, Vex interrupted, clearly not wanting to address that particular elephant in the room. The betting pool for today's war games is now open. Current odds favor the Zentorian Energy Weapons team at 3-1, followed by the Krillian Biotech Division at 5-1. What about the humans? Asked Cadet Fleek, a gelatinous blob creature whose species apparently communicated through color changes. Currently, he was a shade of green that suggested mild nausea. Vex's laugh sounded like gravel in a blender. The humans, 27-1 against. I'd say those are generous odds, considering their equipment appears to have been manufactured during their planet's industrial revolution. The aliens found this hilarious. Even the Academy's AI seemed to process the joke with something resembling electronic amusement. Meanwhile, the humans continued their equipment checks with the kind of methodical precision that would have impressed a Swiss watchmaker. Rock's squad consisted of 5 other soldiers, each one looking like they'd been carved from granite and seasoned with quiet competence. Private Murphy finished applying what appeared to be his 3rd layer of duct tape and looked up. Sarge, how much you want to bet these fancy shields have never been field tested? What makes you say that? Rock asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. They're too clean. No scorch marks, no dents, no field modifications. This is all factory fresh, straight from the lab equipment. Murphy patted his own scarred and battered vest affectionately. This old girl's been through 3 wars and a police action, still stops bullets. Primitive, Zorp scoffed, having overheard the conversation. Your armor can only protect against kinetic projectiles. My shield can deflect directed energy weapons, particle beams, and even some forms of exotic matter. Impressive, Rock said, and for a moment it sounded like he meant it. How long does the power cell last? Power cell? Zorp's mandibles clicked uncertainly. Yeah, you know, the thing that keeps your fancy shield running. How long before it needs recharging? The question hung in the air like a bad smell. Zorp's compound eyes shifted nervously. Well, under optimal conditions, approximately 4 hours of continuous operation. 4 hours? Murphy repeated slowly. And what happens when it runs out of juice? The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Finally, Blaze flickered back into the conversation. Our technology is designed for quick, decisive engagements. Prolonged conflicts are inefficient. Rock nodded thoughtfully. Right. And what happens when the other guy doesn't get the memo about keeping things short and sweet? That's when Instructor Grimm stepped into the courtyard. Nobody was quite sure what species Grimm belonged to, mainly because he was covered in so much scar tissue and cybernetic implants that his original biology was anyone's guess. What everyone did know was that he'd been teaching combat tactics since before most of their species had discovered fire. Listen up, you cosmic Boy Scouts, Grimm growled, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd personally introduced several civilizations to the concept of mortality. War games start in 30 minutes. Rules are simple. Capture the flag, eliminate the enemy. Survive. Medical drones will extract you if you're tagged out, but don't count on them being gentle about it. He paused, scanning the assembled cadets with eyes that had seen the rise and fall of empires. Oh, and one more thing. The enemy you'll be facing? They're not playing by your rules. They're not impressed by your technology, they don't care about your superior breeding, and they definitely don't give a damn about your energy shields. The aliens shifted uncomfortably. The humans just listened. Any questions? Grimm asked. Rock raised his hand. Rules of engagement? Kill or be killed, Sergeant, just like the real thing. And with that cheerful thought, the greatest military education in galactic history was about to begin. The Academy's combat simulation arena was an impressive piece of engineering, roughly the size of a small city and packed with enough holographic terrain to make a theme park designer weep with envy. Mountains, forests, urban environments, and even an active volcano, because apparently someone thought lava would add excitement to the experience. The alien cadets spread out across the starting zone like peacocks on parade, their advanced equipment humming, beeping, and glowing with all the subtlety of a neon sign convention. Energy shields shimmered, biotech armor pulsed with organic rhythms, and various exotic weapons powered up with sounds that would have made a movie sound effects team proud. "Remember," Commander Vex announced over the comm system, his voice dripping with the kind of confidence that usually comes right before spectacular failure. "This is a live-fire exercise. The enemy drones are programmed to eliminate you with extreme prejudice. Your advanced technology should make this a simple demonstration of galactic superiority." Zorp's energy shield flickered as he performed a final systems check. "This will be over in minutes," he chittered to his squad. "My defensive matrix combined with Blaze's energy attacks will create an unstoppable offensive formation." "Agreed," Blaze crackled, his form shifting between solid and plasma states like a disco ball having an identity crisis. "The humans will likely be eliminated within the first engagement. Perhaps we should request they be extracted early to avoid unnecessary casualties." Meanwhile, the humans had spread out in what could only be described as the most boring formation in military history. No fancy light shows, no dramatic poses, just 6 soldiers who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, methodically checking their equipment one last time. "Murphy," Rock said quietly, "how's our comm gear?" "Solid, Sarge. These fancy boys are broadcasting on about 12 different frequencies, but we're on the old analog backup. Nice and quiet." "Good. Johnson, what's the terrain look like?" Private Johnson, who'd been studying the holographic landscape with the intensity of someone actually paying attention, looked up from his tablet. "Standard urban warfare setup, lots of cover, multiple approach routes, and approximately 37 really good ambush points." 37? Rock raised an eyebrow. "I counted twice, Sarge. Could be 38 if you count the overpass, but the sightlines are questionable." The game began with all the subtlety of a supernova. The alien cadets charged forward en masse, their energy weapons lighting up the artificial sky like the galaxy's worst fireworks display. Zorp's shield dome expanded to its maximum radius, creating a mobile fortress that glowed blue enough to be visible from orbit. Blaze dispersed into his energy form and began zipping between buildings, leaving trails of crackling plasma that would have made a lightning bolt jealous. It was impressive, dramatic, and about as tactically sound as a screen door on a submarine. The enemy drones, meanwhile, had been programmed by someone with a very nasty sense of humor. Instead of engaging in glorious combat, they did something far more sinister. They waited, hidden in shadows, around corners, and in places where all that glowing alien technology stood out like birthday candles in a blackout. The first casualty was Cadet Fleek, the gelatinous blob creature who had turned a confident shade of orange and was oozing down the main street like he owned the place. The drone that eliminated him had been sitting motionless on a rooftop for the entire 30 seconds the exercise had been running, waiting for something bright and obvious to wander into its crosshairs. "Cadet Fleek has been eliminated," Instructor Grimm's voice announced, with the kind of professional detachment that made everyone suddenly remember this was supposed to be educational. "Cause of termination, failed to observe basic cover protocols." "Impossible," Zorp chittered, his shield flickering with indignation. "The drones can't possibly have weapons capable of penetrating our defenses." That's when the second drone opened fire on his position. The energy bolt that hit Zorp's shield was admittedly impressive. It created a light show that would have been perfect for a rock concert, complete with sparks, smoke, and the kind of dramatic crackling that made everyone feel like they were watching a big-budget action movie. What it didn't do was penetrate the shield. What it did do was drain approximately 30% of the power cell in a single hit. "Zorp," Blaze's voice crackled over the comm, "your shield is functioning at 70% efficiency." "I noticed," Zorp replied, his voice carrying the first hint of uncertainty. "But that's still more than adequate for this exercise." The third drone hit him from behind. The fourth drone hit him from the left. The fifth drone hit him from above. By the time the sixth drone finished its contribution to the light show, Zorp's shield was running on fumes, and his confidence had taken a hit that no amount of advanced technology could deflect. "This is impossible," he wheezed, his mandibles clicking frantically. "The drones are supposed to engage in honorable combat, not this coordinated ambush nonsense." "Cadet Zorp has been eliminated," Grimm announced. "Cause of termination, catastrophic power failure, followed by immediate target acquisition." Blaze, meanwhile, had discovered that being an energy being had some unexpected drawbacks. His dispersed form might have been immune to physical projectiles, but it also made him about as subtle as a solar flare. Every time he moved, he left a trail of crackling energy that made tracking him roughly as difficult as following a neon sign through a dark alley. The drones didn't bother trying to hit him directly. They just waited for him to solidify, then opened fire on his position with the kind of concentrated firepower that would have made a military contractor weep with joy. "This is highly irregular," Blaze protested as he flickered between rooftops, leaving a trail of scorch marks that would have been visible from space. "Energy beings are supposed to have tactical advantages in combat scenarios." "Lady Blaze has been eliminated," Grim announced. "Cause of termination, predictable movement patterns and excessive electromagnetic signature." In the span of 5 minutes, the cream of galactic military technology had been reduced to a collection of very expensive paperweights. The humans, meanwhile, had moved approximately 50 meters and hadn't fired a single shot. "Starge," Murphy whispered into his radio, "you seeing this?" "Copy that," Rock replied, his voice carrying the tone of someone who just watched a professional football team lose to a high school marching band. "Johnson, what's our drone count?" "Approximately 23 active units, Sarge. They're using standard hunter-killer tactics, setting up overlapping fields of fire and waiting for targets to expose themselves." "Standard hunter-killer tactics," Rock repeated slowly. "Murphy, remind me what we've been dealing with for the past 3 wars?" "Standard hunter-killer tactics, Sarge." "Right. Gentlemen, I do believe it's time to go to work." And for the first time since the exercise began, the humans started moving with purpose. What happened next was less like watching a military exercise and more like watching a nature documentary about apex predators. The humans didn't charge forward with dramatic flair or announce their intentions with light shows. Instead, they simply vanished into the urban terrain like smoke in a hurricane. "Where did they go?" Commander Vex demanded, his scaled fingers dancing across his observation console. "The tracking systems show they were right there 30 seconds ago." Instructor Grimm's scarred face might have been smiling, but it was hard to tell under all the cybernetic implants. "They're using a tactical approach called not being idiots, Commander. It's surprisingly effective." The first sign that something had changed came when drone number 7 simply stopped responding to commands. No dramatic explosion, no spectacular light show, just a quiet blip on the tactical display going dark. Then drone number 12. Then drone number 4. "This is impossible," Vex hissed, his forked tongue flicking out nervously. "The drones are military grade, designed to withstand conventional weapons fire." "Oh, they're withstanding it just fine," Grim replied, his voice carrying the kind of professional amusement that came from watching someone else learn a hard lesson. "The problem is that conventional weapons fire isn't what's killing them." Meanwhile, in the simulated urban environment, Sergeant Rock was demonstrating why humans had earned their reputation as the galaxy's most stubbornly persistent species. He'd positioned himself on the 3rd floor of a partially collapsed building, using a hole in the wall that provided an excellent view of the street below while keeping him completely invisible from ground level. His rifle was nothing special by galactic standards. No energy projectors, no plasma conduits, no quantum targeting system. Just a chemically propelled projectile weapon that had been designed by someone who understood that the best technology is the kind that works when everything else falls apart. "Target acquired," he whispered into his radio, his voice so quiet it wouldn't have disturbed a sleeping insect. "Drone positioned on Building 7, approximately 200 meters northeast. Johnson, you have eyes on the backup unit?" "Affirmative, Sarge. Drone number 15 is holding position behind the overpass. Classic Overwatch setup." "Murphy, what's your status?" "In position, Sarge. Found their command relay. Turns out fancy AI drones need to phone home every few minutes to update their tactical assessments." This was the moment when the aliens watching from the observation deck began to understand that they might have made a slight miscalculation. Rock's first shot took out drone number 7 with the kind of precision that would have made a Swiss watch manufacturer weep with envy. The projectile struck the drone's primary sensor array, sending it tumbling from its perch like a very expensive paperweight. No explosion, no dramatic flare, just the quiet efficiency of a tool being used by someone who understood exactly how it worked. "Impossible," Vex muttered. "That drone was equipped with reactive armor plating." "Reactive armor works great against energy weapons," Grim observed. "Not so much against a chunk of metal moving at 3,000 feet per second." The second shot eliminated drone number 15 before it even realized it was under attack. Johnson had been studying the thing for the past 10 minutes, learning its movement patterns, understanding its blind spots, and waiting for the perfect moment to introduce it to the concept of kinetic energy transfer. But it was Murphy who really stole the show. While the other humans were picking off individual drones with the patience of professional librarians, Murphy had been working on what he called the big picture. He'd located the enemy command node, studied its defensive perimeter, and come up with a solution that would have made an engineer proud and a safety inspector faint. "Start," Murphy whispered into his radio. I'm about to make some noise. Copy that. How much noise? Remember that time in the Proxima campaign when we had to clear that bunker complex? There was a pause. Murphy, please tell me you're not about to do what I think you're about to do. Okay, I won't tell you. The explosion that followed wasn't the kind of spectacular fireworks display that the aliens had been producing all day. It was something far more terrifying. A controlled demolition that brought down exactly the right building at exactly the right time, crushing the enemy command node and severing the communications link that kept the remaining drones coordinated. Holy entropy, Vex breathed, watching his tactical display dissolve into chaos. They just eliminated the entire command structure with a single detonation. Humans have this thing about explosives, Grim explained. They don't just use them to make things go boom, they use them to solve problems. What followed was less like a battle and more like a very expensive pest control operation. Without their command node, the remaining drones reverted to basic programming, which made them about as tactically sophisticated as angry hornets. The humans, meanwhile, had settled into the kind of methodical rhythm that came from decades of experience dealing with exactly this type of situation. Private Johnson eliminated 3 more drones by luring them into a kill zone he'd set up using nothing more complicated than a mirror and some patience. The drones' targeting systems were designed to track energy signatures and movement patterns, but they'd apparently never encountered someone who understood that sometimes the best way to move was to make your enemy come to you. Private Stevens took out 4 drones using what could only be described as advanced hide-and-seek. He'd found a maintenance tunnel that ran underneath the entire combat zone, allowing him to pop up wherever the drones least expected him. By the time they'd adjusted their search patterns, he was already 3 blocks away, setting up his next ambush. This is remarkable, Vex said, his voice carrying the tone of someone watching everything he believed about warfare get systematically dismantled. They're not using superior technology or advanced tactics. They're just better at this than we are. Experience, Grim replied. These humans have been fighting wars since before your species discovered fire. They've learned things about combat that you can't program into a computer or build into a weapons system. The final drone fell to Sergeant Rock, who'd been tracking it for the past 15 minutes with the patience of someone who'd learned that the best way to win a fight was to make sure the other guy never knew there was a fight happening. 1 shot, 1 kill, and suddenly the combat zone was as quiet as a library. Exercise complete, Graham announced. All enemy units eliminated. Human casualties, 0. Alien casualties, everyone. The observation deck was silent except for the hum of life support systems and the sound of several advanced civilizations having their worldviews quietly readjusted. How? Vex finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. How did they do that? Rock's voice crackled over the comm system, carrying the kind of professional satisfaction that came from a job well done. Simple, sir. We didn't try to fight the drones, we fought the war. And that's when the aliens began to understand the difference between having advanced technology and knowing how to use it. The observation deck had gone so quiet you could have heard a pin drop in a vacuum. Commander Vex stood frozen at his console, his reptilian features cycling through what appeared to be the 5 stages of grief at hyperspeed. The other alien cadets, who'd been eliminated early, were staring at the tactical displays like they were trying to solve a puzzle written in a language that didn't exist. Run the replay, Vex finally managed, his voice carrying the tone of someone who'd just watched his favorite sports team lose to a group of enthusiastic toddlers. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the entire engagement from start to finish. What had seemed like chaos in real time now revealed itself as something far more disturbing. A textbook example of small unit tactics executed with the kind of precision that made Swiss clockwork look sloppy. Pause it there, Instructor Grimm growled, pointing at the moment when the humans had first spread out. Look at their formation. Anyone want to tell me what they're doing? Cadet Fleek, still a mortified shade of purple from his early elimination, rippled uncertainly. They're spreading out? They're creating interlocking fields of observation and fire, Grimm corrected. Each position supports the others, provides multiple fallback routes, and ensures that no single point of failure can compromise the entire operation. It's called not putting all your eggs in one basket, and it's apparently a concept that escaped your attention. The replay continued, showing Rock's methodical approach to target acquisition. Where the alien cadets had charged forward like they were storming a beach, Rock had spent several minutes just watching, learning the drone's patrol patterns, identifying their blind spots, and planning his engagement sequence. Notice anything interesting about his weapon? Grimm asked. Zorp's mandibles clicked nervously. It's primitive? It's simple, Grim corrected. No power cells to drain, no complex targeting systems to malfunction, no energy signatures to track, just a mechanical system that works the same way every time you pull the trigger. When was the last time any of you cleaned your weapons? The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Blaze flickered back to semi-solid form. Our weapons are self-maintaining. They don't require manual intervention. And what happens when the self-maintenance system fails? More silence. I'll tell you what happens, Grim continued, his voice carrying the patience of someone explaining basic mathematics to particularly slow students. You end up with a very expensive paperweight while the enemy continues to shoot at you with weapons that work. The replay showed Murphy's demolition of the command node, and several aliens actually flinched at the controlled precision of the explosion. What had looked like random destruction was revealed to be surgical removal of exactly the right structural supports to bring down exactly the right section of building. How did he know which supports to target? Vex asked, his professional interest finally overcoming his wounded pride. Experience, Grim replied. Murphy has been blowing things up professionally for 15 years. He understands structural engineering, explosive physics, and the kind of patience required to place charges while people are shooting at you. When was the last time any of you practiced demolitions? We have specialized equipment for structural modification, Blaze offered weakly. Equipment that requires power, technical support, and optimal operating conditions, Grim observed. What happens when you need to blow something up in a swamp, or underwater, or in a radiation field that scrambles your electronics? The questions were starting to pile up like a cosmic-scale game of Jenga, and the aliens were beginning to realize that every answer revealed another gap in their understanding. But surely, Vex protested, our advanced defensive systems provide superior protection. Zorp's energy shield can withstand massive amounts of damage. For 4 hours, Grim reminded him, and only if it's working perfectly, and only if the enemy cooperates by attacking from predictable directions with predictable weapons. What happens when the enemy doesn't read the manual? The replay showed the systematic elimination of Zorp's shield through coordinated attacks from multiple directions. What had seemed like overwhelming firepower was revealed to be a carefully planned exercise in resource depletion. They weren't trying to penetrate the shield, Zorp realized with dawning horror. They were trying to drain it. Congratulations, Grim said dryly. You've discovered the concept of attrition warfare. Humans invented it approximately 10,000 years ago, refined it through countless conflicts, and have been using it to defeat technologically superior opponents ever since. The final part of the replay showed the humans' systematic cleanup of the remaining drones, and this was where the aliens really began to understand the magnitude of their miscalculation. Each human moved with the kind of tactical awareness that came from years of experience, anticipating threats, exploiting opportunities, and adapting to changing conditions with the fluid grace of professional dancers. They're not just soldiers, Vex whispered, his voice carrying the tone of someone experiencing a religious revelation. They're artists. They're survivors, Grim corrected. Every one of those humans has been through situations where their equipment failed, their communications were jammed, their air support was delayed, and their backup plans fell apart. They've learned to fight with whatever they have, wherever they are, against whatever they're facing. Cadet Fleek rippled a nervous shade of green. But our technology is superior. Our weapons are more powerful, our armor more advanced, our tactics more sophisticated. Your technology is impressive, Grim agreed. Your weapons are indeed more powerful. Your armor is certainly more advanced. But your tactics? He paused, letting the weight of the statement settle. Your tactics are designed by people who've never been shot at. The observation deck fell silent as the implications sank in. These aliens had grown up in a galaxy where warfare was theoretical, where conflicts were resolved through superior technology and overwhelming firepower. They'd never had to learn the hard lessons that came from fighting for survival against opponents who refused to acknowledge their technological superiority. The human's armor, Vex said slowly, it's not just protection, it's tested. Every piece of equipment they carry has been used in actual combat, Grim confirmed. That duct tape Murphy was using? It's there because experience taught him that sometimes the most sophisticated equipment in the galaxy can be fixed with a strip of adhesive and some creative thinking. But that's so... Zorp struggled for the word. Practical, Grim finished. Humans have this annoying habit of caring more about what works than what looks impressive. They've been fighting wars for so long that they've forgotten how to be impressed by their own technology. The final revelation came when Private Johnson's voice crackled over the comm system, calm and professional as he delivered his after-action report. Sarge, I count 23 confirmed kills, 0 friendly casualties, and approximately 12 minutes of engagement time. Recommend we police up the area and return to base. Copy that, Johnson. Good work, everyone. Pack it up. No celebration, no dramatic victory speeches, no posturing. Just professional soldiers doing their job with the kind of matter-of-fact competence that made it look easy. 12 minutes, Vex repeated numbly. They eliminated our entire defensive network in 12 minutes. Actually, Grim corrected with what might have been a smile, they eliminated your defensive network in the first 3 minutes. They spent the other 9 minutes making sure they hadn't missed anything. And that's when the aliens finally understood the most terrifying thing about humans. They weren't just better at war than Evrio. The debriefing room at the Galactic Military Academy had all the atmosphere of a funeral parlor, if funeral parlors specialized in burying the dreams and aspirations of overconfident alien cadets. Commander Vex sat at the head of the table, his scales having shifted to a dull gray that suggested either deep contemplation or mild depression. The other alien cadets occupied their chairs with the kind of defeated posture usually reserved for sports fans whose team had just lost by 40 points. Sergeant Rock and his squad filed in with the same matter-of-fact professionalism they'd demonstrated throughout the entire exercise. No swagger, no triumphant grins, no victory dances. Just 6 humans who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, carrying their battered equipment with the casual indifference of people who'd done this 1,000 times before. Gentlemen, Instructor Grimm began, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on the assembled group. Let's discuss what we learned today. We learned that humans are terrifyingly competent, Zorp muttered, his mandibles clicking with what sounded like grudging respect. My energy shield, which cost more than most starships, was rendered useless by basic tactical coordination. Not useless, Rock corrected, his tone carrying the patience of someone explaining something to a particularly slow student. Just inappropriate for the mission. Inappropriate? Vex's forked tongue flicked out nervously. How is advanced defensive technology inappropriate? Murphy, who'd been quietly field-stripping his rifle with the kind of practiced efficiency that made it look like meditation, looked up. Because it makes you a target, sir. That shield of his lit up like a Christmas tree and drew fire from every drone in the area. In a real combat situation that would have gotten his entire squad killed. But the protection it provides is temporary, Rock interrupted gently. 4 hours of power, assuming optimal conditions. What happens on hour 5? What happens when you're pinned down for 2 days waiting for extraction? What happens when the enemy decides to wait you out? The questions hung in the air like smoke from a particularly unpleasant fire. Finally, Blaze flickered back to semi-collided form, his energy patterns subdued. We never considered extended engagements. Most species don't, Grimm observed. You're used to conflicts that are resolved quickly, decisively, with overwhelming technological superiority. Humans have been fighting wars where both sides have roughly equivalent technology for millennia. They've learned to win through preparation, adaptation, and sheer stubborn persistence. But surely, Cadet Fleek rippled, his color cycling through several shades of confused purple, our individual capabilities are superior. My species can survive in environments that would kill most carbon-based life forms. That's useful, Johnson agreed, speaking for the first time since the debriefing began. But can you do it while carrying 60 pounds of equipment, maintaining communications with your squad, and engaging targets at 300 meters? The silence that followed was answer enough. The thing is, Stevens added, his voice carrying the tone of someone sharing a professional insight, survival isn't about having the best gear or the most advanced biology. It's about being prepared for the moment when everything goes wrong simultaneously. Everything goes wrong simultaneously, Vex repeated slowly. You plan for that. We plan for everything, Rock replied. Equipment failure, communications breakdown, air support delays, ammunition shortages, medical emergencies, adverse weather conditions, and the occasional complete tactical surprise. Murphy's duct tape isn't a joke. It's backup equipment for when the primary systems fail. Murphy held up a roll of the aforementioned tape. This cost me about 3 credits. It's waterproof, temperature-resistant, chemically inert, and can be used to fix approximately 70% of the equipment failures we're likely to encounter in the field. 70%? Zorp's compound eyes widened. The other 30% usually involves explosives or creative cursing, Murphy added helpfully. Commander Vex leaned back in his chair, his reptilian features displaying the kind of expression usually seen on people who just realized they'd been doing something wrong for their entire lives. Your equipment, your tactics, your entire approach to warfare. It's all based on the assumption that nothing will work the way it's supposed to. Murphy's Law, Rock confirmed. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, at the worst possible moment. We've built our entire military doctrine around that principle. But that's so... Blaze struggled for the word. Pessimistic? Stevens suggested. Paranoid? Depressing? Practical, Grimm finished. Humans have been fighting wars for so long that they've learned to expect the unexpected. They don't just train for victory, they train for disaster. The revelation seemed to settle over the alien cadets like a heavy blanket. Everything they'd believed about warfare, about technology, about their own superiority had been quietly dismantled by 6 humans who acted like this was just another day at the office. There's something else, Vex said quietly, his voice carrying the tone of someone who just realized they were missing a crucial piece of information. During the exercise, you eliminated 23 drones in 12 minutes, but you never seemed rushed. You never seemed like you were operating at full capacity. The humans exchanged glances, and for the first time since the debriefing began, there was something that might have been amusement in their expressions. Sir, Rock said carefully, those drones were using standard hunter-killer tactics. We've been dealing with that particular threat profile for about 15 years. It's routine. Routine, Vex repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. What he's not telling you, Grimm added with what was definitely amusement, is that this was a training exercise. Those drones were programmed to simulate early-generation combat units. The humans have been fighting opponents with significantly more advanced capabilities for decades. The implications hit the alien cadets like a physical blow. Not only had they been completely outclassed, but they'd been outclassed by humans who were essentially warming up. What? Fleek's color cycled through several shades of existential crisis. What would happen if you faced a real threat? Murphy finished reassembling his rifle with a soft click. Well, sir, we'd probably have to start trying. And that's when the aliens finally understood the most humbling truth in the galaxy. They hadn't just lost to the humans. They'd lost to the humans' junior varsity team. The debriefing ended with the kind of thoughtful silence that usually followed profound philosophical revelations. The alien cadets filed out quietly, their worldviews permanently readjusted, their respect for human military doctrine, grudgingly but genuinely established. As the humans prepared to leave, Vex approached Sergeant Rock with the hesitant manner of someone who'd just discovered they knew far less than they thought they did. Sergeant, he said quietly, one final question. Your species has been fighting wars for thousands of years. You've developed this incredible military expertise through necessity and experience, but surely there must be some limit to your capabilities. Rock paused at the door, his expression thoughtful. Well, sir, we haven't figured out how to weaponize coffee yet, but give us time. He left Commander Vex standing in the empty debriefing room, staring at the tactical displays that showed the complete and total domination of galactic military technology by 6 humans with duct tape and attitude. And somewhere in the back of his reptilian mind, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy had been looking at the concept of advanced civilization all wrong. After all, any species that could turn a hot beverage into a potential weapon probably had a few more surprises up their sleeves, no else. They were so much better that they made it look routine.